What's up, guys? It's Ambition, and I started a whole ass war in the comments of my last video. And I feel like a lot of the negative comments would have just never occurred in the first place first of all, if people watched the entire video, but I can't expect people to do that because I started with like the most negative part of my messaging. So a lot of people just got turned off and left, and they didn't see like the really important and valid point I had in the end. A lot of negative comments wouldn't have occurred if I was a little more clear. And on top of that, there's just something I have to straight up take back. So I'm gonna have to eat my words on something in this video. It's been really fun to dive into it and hear everyone's thoughts. I'm so grateful and almost kind of shocked for the 60 to 70% of people who were so nice in the comments. Because looking back at it, I don't like to structure my video. I started by being super mean, so everyone that I made angry didn't have the chance to understand my point. And then also I kind of use it for therapy. As I expressed in my last video, I was kind of angry. You know, I lost 4 years of where I could have made much better mixes, and because I was listening to the wrong people, I ripped so much of my hair out for so long. So I was angry. I definitely let that emotion seep through, not only when I was talking about EDM tips and Streaky, but also as I was discussing other things. It was a very emotional video, but by talking about some mainstream EDM YouTubers, I brought in a lot of their fans. I'd like to first make this message to all the EDM tips and Streaky fans that came into the comment section like bulldogs were defending their loyal master. Just playing. But you know, they were so quick to point out the obvious that Will from EDM Tips, I didn't even know that was his name, okay? But Will and Streaky, I don't know his name, but he goes by Streaky, have very extensive credentials. These guys they're super legit. You know, they know what they're talking about. By no means are they like scam artists just blindly putting bullshit on. Do I agree with their approach to teaching beginners? Not at all. And I kind of wish I had talked about them at the end of the video, because whoever watched that segment immediately just went in the comment section, said their piece about me, and then didn't watch the point. And so I just want to take the time to say, if you want to make the same type of music than someone else, then you should listen to their advice if they're making that music well. You know what I mean? Like if you want to make the kind of music that EDM Tips makes, then you should listen to EDM Tips. I wish I knew that, because I listened to EDM Tips and I ended up making left field, space bass, glitch hop, dubstep, drum and bass house type of music, you know? Super crazy sound design, glitches, groovy rhythms. It has nothing to do with the mainstream EDM that these guys like to make. So my last video was geared to, if you're a beginner, like in your first 3 to 5 years of making music, you make the type of music that I make, which is stuff like this. Then you should listen to what I have to say, and you should not just take it for what it is. You should let that sink into your brain, think about it, see if you agree or not, talk to me, talk to others about what they think, and make your own decision, you know? But I was talking to you. I wasn't talking to mixing and mastering engineers who do it for a living, who are in like rock or metal, and they get these like super unprocessed stems, and they're hearing some young dude telling them to like not put anything on the mix bus or master. Like, I'm not talking to you, bro. I don't know why you're leaving a 40-page comment, but it's okay, you know? So yeah, and on top of the fact that different genres have different mixing styles and cultures, there's also just the individual inside of that community that can just do whatever they want. If you want to add coloring on your master, do it. If you want to keep your master and mixing in mind while you're producing so that it's all just one thing, it's one process, that's already fine too. And that seems to be the preferred method amongst our people, but definitely not people that are making like mainstream house and all that stuff, you know? My last video was it was a message from me to other bass producers. So if you make, you know, corporate, commercial, electronic dance music, which there's nothing wrong with that, but like mainstream EDM, then I wasn't talking to you, you know? Although it's true, it's a universal concept that you shouldn't use effects that you don't understand or have an ear for. listening to me would be just like me listening to EDM tips 4 years ago. I'm a bass music guy, heavy bass, experimental bass, dubstep, drum and bass, glitch hop, the list goes on, space bass, whatever you want to call it. That's the kind of music I make, and you can definitely, you 100% should listen to the music of the YouTubers you listen to. So go check out Lit Roosta. I'm serious, because if you don't like that music, you should take my videos with a grain of salt. My video, my last one, was for beginner bass producers. If you've been in the game for 3 to 5 years and your mixes just don't sound right and you're making our kind of music, my guy, look at the last video and take it to heart. Trust me. So all these Streaky and EDM tip fans, I'm well aware that these two guys have tons of credentials. They are legit. They know what they're doing, but they 100% held me back from good mixes because I was taking advice from people who don't make the music that I ended up making. And it's important to say, you don't really know your identity when you are beginning your path as an artist. At least not most people do. Very quickly, I started changing. I noticed that my drops were always a little aggressive, and next thing I knew, my BPM was 128, and then after that, out of nowhere, it was 150, and I was making all kinds of bassy sounds, and now here I am. I make crazy shit. That was the first point I wanted to address. I unfortunately was very emotional in my last video, but that's the funny thing about YouTube. They don't know me, but I know them, and I wish I didn't know them. So I got it off my chest, and life moves on, okay? The next thing is, I got a good handful amount of mixing and mastering engineers that have been doing it for a living as long as I've been alive. And first of all, if you're so mad about me saying what I said, then to me, that kind of points out that you're not aware of different genres and different mixing cultures. Mixing culture is not a term. I'm just right now saying it to express how different genres have such a different approach to mixing. And if you're making mainstream EDM, then chances are you are going to be applying a lot of the things that EDM tips and Streaky are doing. But when it comes to harder styles of electronic dance music, overwhelmingly, people are switching to the smash all of your sounds into the clipper method. And it has very quick results and it's simple. And I think that's why it's so attractive. So the mixing and mastering engineers in the comments last video, they're like, you don't know what you're talking about. Look, either you're not aware that different genres are going to have different, mixing styles, or you just didn't watch the whole video. That comment, though, was so interesting to dive into because funk, for example, is notorious for distorting the living crap out of the master. Applying heavy distortion on the master is the norm. That's kind of what you're supposed to do. That's part of the sound. And that would be absurd if you did that on a mainstream EDM song. People would flip shit. They would go crazy. So it was really cool to think about how every genre has a different way to do it. And even in the bass music scene, it's not a crime to add saturation, compression, EQ on your master or your mix bus. At the end of the day, it's not even about if it sounds good. Man, it's just art. You do whatever you want. It's whatever you want. I will say, for me personally and a lot of my friends, it's easier to reach the sound that we want when we don't have a whole bunch of effects on the mix and master. But for those mixing and mastering engineers that are like, what are you talking about? You do nothing in your master. Or this one guy was like, and I like this comment a lot. You contradicted yourself. You said that mastering is just turning up the volume. And then earlier you said that mastering was an art form. And that's a great point to bring up. And so to clarify that, mixing and mastering is just another word for looking at your track from a macro perspective. Mixing is looking at it to see how all the elements play together. And mastering is like the finishing touches, right? A lot of people in my community, we keep that in mind while we're creating the sounds. And that's not everybody, but I would say overwhelmingly people will, smash their sound into a clipper. They would group it by the characteristic of the sound. So all the crazy bass sound elements are going to be in one group and they're going to get smashed into maybe even their own clipper. The sub is going to have a dedicated kind of like external channel just to have full control of it. There's going to be one group processing potentially on the drums, which could just be smashing into a clipper as well. And then all those elements are kind of just like leveled out in the mixing stage, maybe glued together if you need to, by having those sounds share sonic sonic information. So when you apply saturation or you compress, sounds start to all make more sense together because they share effects in common. So a lot of people some people might add stuff in the mix or in the mixing stage, in the mix bus. And then if you want to add color on your mastering, go right ahead. Mastering is art, but a lot of people in our community, they will just keep the mix and master in mind as they're making their sound and creating their song. It's a different way to go about it, and it should be common sense. Everyone's doing it their own way, and there's such thing as like a mixing culture. But that's just my take, man. You're on my channel, once again, if you want to double down on not agreeing, then go right ahead. I think it's interesting. I see it as discourse. I'm not mad about it at all. I'm gonna go ahead and rip off the band-aid about infrasound, which is like frequencies 20 hertz and below, because I made them sound like they were some endangered species that we have to preserve, and they're so important, and how could you ever dare cut off anything under 20 hertz? I was just really emotional in that moment. I kind of said some bullshit. I forgot to cut it out. But I'm sure you've heard that magic is in the mid-range, right? And that's basically saying that the mid-range, we're going to say from like 250 hertz-ish to 4,000 hertz, is where your sound's information is most clear, where people can hear and understand what melodies are going on and what your song is really saying. Things like the sub or the really high range sounds, those are like little tickles or like heavy feelings. They're like, they provide a more like body experience. But the mid-range is kind of what your song is. And that's not an absolute, but it kind of shows you how, you could have a great mix or a great balance of your sub and your really high end, like 5K and up. But if your mid-range is butt, then you're not gonna have a good track. No, labels will probably churn you down because what you're saying isn't clear. It's muffled or it's just not clear. So the sub and the tickle high end are not as important as the mid-range. If that's the case, then infrasound is like really not important. So the truth is you can cut it or don't. Like it's definitely hardly worth debating, in my opinion, But I will say this, I didn't completely talk out of my ass. I did research before saying those things, and I encourage you to Google it yourself, that there's plenty of sub sound systems that are used at big festivals. There's one festival called Infrasound, and I actually went as far as reaching out to them, but I'll get to that. And those subs, according to the internet and the people who make those subs, will say they can go as low as 12, 16 hertz from what I saw. So infrasound can be reached in a festival setting. I wasn't full of shit in that department. Is it important? No, definitely not. I'm sorry I've lost it on that part, but they are a thing. They do exist. You do feel them. Yeah, they are a thing and they're not important. So I had to roll that one back for sure. I found it so interesting, the number of people that really defended sending your work to a mixing and mastering engineer. And I heard tons of really good points, Someone got really mad when I said that if you want something to be your song, you have to mix and master it yourself. And, to be completely honest, I still believe that their perspective was some mixing and mastering engineers are better at fulfilling your vision than you are. But my rebuttal to that is that it's a skill issue. And I just don't see how someone else could dig in your brain better than you if you trained yourself to understand the tools and dig in your own brain, basically. So if they're seeing your vision better than you and adding things that you couldn't have thought of, then to me, they're bringing in creative decisions. And I think that if you're sharing creative decisions with another person, it's a collab. That's how I see it. It's not fully your track, in my opinion. I don't know why, like literally I was staying so far away from all these like super, deep and intense topics in our community, but it's just my opinion. I think that if you're sending it to a mixing and mastering engineer every time, you don't have full control of your sound, your art that you're making. And that's totally fine. There's by no means is anyone's, for example, on Lit Roosta, I did the rap, the vocals, I mixed and mastered everything. I made all the sound design. I made all the sounds, right? Does that make me better than you? Not at all. Like that's literally, who cares? Like there's people that have put in no effort in tracks and they have changed the world, right? a lot of the bangers that we grew up on were just simple sampled or presets with some dude just rapping on it, you know? That's fine. How could I say I'm better than them? That's kind of a lame hill to die on. However, I would say my song is a lot more representation of me than it would be that person, because that person shared the creative aspect of their art with someone else. And there's nothing wrong with that, but to me, that's a collab. That's all I'm saying, you know? Let's normalize putting the mixing and mastering engineer as a collab on Spotify, because if they're really transforming your track that much, they deserve it. Like, it's not just a money thing, like they deserve it. That's just my take though. And honorable mention, you know, yeah, in the mainstream or just like house, I'd say just any mainstream EDM genre, it's super normalized to send your stuff out to mixing and mastering engineer. And it is what it is, man. Like, honestly, it's not even something for me to speak about. I don't really make that kind of music ever. You know, it's just not fun to me. Yeah, you know, the truth is, like, when it comes to mastering, you can add color at that phase or you don't have to. It just fully depends on the genre you make and your creative decisions. There's hardly any rules. It's just been a big trend of people moving away from the standard mix bus, then master, always, no matter what, to, you know, smashing your sound into a clipper. That's just been it more and more for more and more people. So yeah, you don't have to take that advice if you don't want to, but that's what I've seen. And that's, think about it. If I was full of crap, why would there be so many people agreeing with me? And these are not people that don't know what they're talking about, because they're saying this has been my experience too, or someone finally said it, you know? So something to consider. I did get a few people talking about my arrogance. Once again, like, you know, it was an emotional video, but with that being said, I am a confident person. I'm not fully talking on my butt here. And this kind of all goes back to how you need to listen to the songs that people make. Like, if you're it's not even just a taking advice thing, you know? Like, if you're listening to someone talk, listen to their music. And if you're like, this is stupid music, I hate it, then just know that. You can still watch their content, you know, or don't, but just know who you're listening to. And don't worry about the credits, man. Honestly, like, the credits don't matter. What matters is the music that you hear from that person. Like, is it different? Is it unique? Is it creative? Is it good? Would you listen to it for fun? Is it admirable? You know, something to consider. Yeah, as far as like cutting out below 120 hertz, if you're in the drop, you're greatly going to benefit from a clear and open low end, especially in our genre. Like, if there's a drop, you want to remove the low end elements from things that don't need it. But in the verse, if there's just a hi-hat and that hi-hat has a little bit of body at the bottom, it's not the end of the world to leave that. If anything, it could really benefit your track. So my overall point was, don't do it just because you've heard that. Chances are you're pretty Gucci when it comes to leaving that kind of information. A lot of sounds just don't have that much info in there. And as someone that like rarely makes low cuts, and my mixes are pretty decent, I wouldn't stress it. For the people that are saying, who are you to say all the things you're saying? Hey, look, the norm in our world is if you even just finish a couple songs, you're already like different from everyone else. On top of that, a lot of people that send songs to labels, they just don't get responded to, or they continuously get the, sorry, we're gonna have to pass on this over and over again. 6 months ago, I started sending my songs out to labels, and since then, Lit Roosta was on Aspire Higher. It's not a small label by any means. I currently have a lot of labels that are actually like wanting to take this track right here. I have another one coming out on Gravitas Recordings in a few months, you know? So am I res? Absolutely not. And I like that. I'm glad that instead of being your EDM daddy, I'm actually your older brother, you know? Like, hopefully, and I might not be, but I'd love to be that guy that's like just a few steps ahead, because it's so much more relatable to where you're at. That's just my take though, you know? But by no means am I like wildly successful yet. I'm only getting started, and I'm having dude, what matters, I'm having a ton of fun, and I'm so grateful that results are coming from it. I'm not the one that's saying my tracks are lit. These pretty decently big labels are. So I don't want to sound like a know-it-all, but at the same time, I want to be able to just turn on the camera and just like talk to you guys. And that's going to be a more raw, emotional version of me, you know? So I guess in a way, it kind of sucks that I'm coming off as like, you know, what was the words that people were using? Like that I need to learn some or to be humble, and that I'm sounding arrogant. Like that kind of sucks. I'm just trying to like shoot the shit with you guys, you know? So it is what it is. You know, we're learning as we go. It's my 10th video. So yeah, if you want to make sure I'm the right channel for you, I highly recommend you check out Lit Roosta. I love that track. I made that track in like, literally the reason why I call it Lit Roosta is because it was 3 a.m. I got out of bed because I couldn't sleep, and I just went to my studio and I started making this track, and it was like magic, dude. Like things just came together together. I was done by 6 a.m. Like the sun was coming up and I had wrapped, pretty much mixed, mastered everything. And like it sounds like not the best mixed track of all time because that morning I was so hyped. I sent it to labels and someone was like interested right away. And so that was actually my first label release. That was the first song I sent out to labels. That track, you know, it means a lot to me. I finally realized that I'm all about really wonky sound design, like weird sounds with groovy rhythms. And that's really the only rules. And I love glitchy stuff. There you go. So it's like, those are the only rules or the things that make my music what it is. You know, that's what I live by. And so, yeah, I'm very proud of that release and I've got some really cool stuff coming out pretty soon. So check out my music. Feel free to add me to your playlist. That's been like a huge help. That dude that added my song to the playlist, like I'm getting like 30 streams a day, bro. This is wealth to me. This is straight up wealth. All right. So either that, I don't offer any courses. I don't even want anyone's money. However, I do love connection and I'll post a video eventually on why I'm starting my retreats or experience, whatever you want to call it. But long story short, life has this annoying ability to inject stress into your brain, especially just the modern society that we live in is so stressful. And when your brain and body is filled with stress, it's impossible or really hard to relax and let your love come out and your passion and your interest. How can you do that when you're constantly stressed out about work? So when I would go on retreats, I've gone on tons of music retreats. Look, I shouldn't call them music retreats. Like I've done a lot of trips that were completely about making music. Some of them were just with friends and it was really cheap. Like I'd go to Vegas and stay at my friend's place, like that kind of stuff. And then other ones, dude, I cannot recommend. And Conti's music retreat changed my life, dude. In fact, I opened mine because of him. Like he's a god. I'll make a whole video about him some other time. That one is, you know what's funny? Like the hard part about that retreat is the price. But when you look at what you're getting, it's like an insane discount. Like if you charge like $15,000, it would make sense considering the value you're getting. And no, I'm not being paid by this guy to tell you. I'm just letting you know. So if you're interested in the comments, you can ask me or you can check it out. I'll have like the link in the description. But yeah, when I went on these retreats, I would leave them. First of all, during the retreat or experience, I'd have tons of fun. Like I'm talking like that feeling you have when you're 12 at a sleepover, just like cry laughing. That's the kind of experience I'd have. And then when I left, dude, my vision was 2020. I realized that I love making music and all this dumb bullshit doesn't matter. Like, do I have food to eat, a bed to sleep in, and Ableton? I'm good. Like, that's really all you need, you know? And unfortunately, it's a lesson that I have to like relearn every couple months because I'm just very anxious as a person. So I just get stressed out very fast. Like as soon as some bullshit happens, I forget my lesson, you know? But I realize I'd love to give that to other people. And honestly, if I'm hosting those types of events, it's like paying for my life now. So it's like best of both worlds. So that's kind of why I started the retreats. But aside from the retreats, there's no way to give me money at this time. I don't have a Discord. I don't want anyone to give me any money for anything. I don't have any donations. I don't have sounds to give. Like I actually have turned down a couple people that asked for lessons because I just don't like the online aspect of giving electronic dance music lessons. And that's kind of why I said, you know what? I'm just going to fully do this retreat thing. If you want to learn, you can come to my place. I have several studios here. We're in the mountains. It's going to be a great time. And it's like a mix of laid back and learning a lot and just having a great time. But also I'm a very results oriented individual. So I want you to leave learning a ton, you know? So yeah, I don't want to keep rambling, but long story short, my last video was crazy. I had a lot of fun making it, but I'm realizing that the rants do start a lot of shit. So I'm probably going to stick to like really fun sound design tutorials and go back to that. If you don't think I should, let me know, you know, voice your opinion. I read every comment. I try to answer all of them. So I've got plenty of controversial takes. I don't know if we should talk about them too much because I don't want people to just get angry. I don't want to rage bait. I will be going back to just make really cool. This next video I've planned is like super awesome. I don't know if it's going to be the last cooker based video, but I found a way to bring a lot of humanity into that sound design. So I'm actually really excited to show you guys. But it's also been really fun to just talk straight to you guys and just shoot the shit and just say stuff and having people say stuff back. So I don't know where the channel's going to go. All I know is I'm having a good time and that's really all that matters. So yeah. All right. Peace.